Hi, so when I'm training people to explore tonality, to explore different kinds of tonality, there's a strange thing that I encounter, a strange blockage that many people encounter when they're trying to do this. Regardless of their background or anything like that, there is this strange tendency to always be pulled to the Ionian mode. The Ionian mode is the sort of normal major key. Now, it's not necessarily people who have had piano lessons in the past, so it's not like they've been playing loads of major scales and that's kind of got into their system. It's certainly not, even though they often say that it is, erroneously. They make the mistake of thinking that it's because they listen to a lot of music that has that tonality. That's absolutely nonsensical in most cases, unless they listen to an awful lot of music written in the 18th and 19th century in Western Europe. And probably mostly the sort of fashionable, not necessarily the music that posterity has kind of passed on to us, where other richer tonalities tend to be explored by those composers. But the most fashionable music of the time would be very Ionian. It's something else. They just get pulled to it for some other reason. So why would music from the 18th and 19th century classical Western tradition, why would that pull our tonal sense? Let me sort of demonstrate. So Sarah's asking for somebody to improvise in the Dorian mode. It's not a difficult idea. If I just say, okay, so this is the tonal center. That harmonic block, that chord, if you like, is the tonal center. I mean, doing it in a sort of folky style like that particularly sort of helps. You sort of feel the flavor. You feel a slightly different flavor from perhaps what we normally do. But any style you can do, just a normal sort of pop idiom. There's nothing odd about Dorian mode, and there's nothing odd about the music that uses it. Nothing whatsoever. There's nothing odd about pentatonic tonality. There's nothing odd about Phrygian or Lydian or any of them. So why is it that this happens? They're quite happily starting in the Dorian mode. That's now the tonal center. It's Ionian. It's gone from Dorian to Ionian, almost against their better judgment. Why? What is it about the tonal fashion of the 18th and 19th century colonial period of Western music that carries such authority? I think I've answered the question, haven't I? I'm not trying to be all woke here. I'm not trying to jump on any sort of woke bandwagon here or anything silly like that. It's really, really true that there is a sort of like a white supremacist aspect to this. There's something really dodgy going on psychologically. We are being pulled to the tonal sound of colonialism, of white men conquering. Really? I mean, it's happening in individuals that would not subscribe to any sort of political persuasion that you'd think they would be pulled that way. So it's not like they know they're doing it, and they certainly don't think that's the reason. They usually say, as I say, the erroneous thing that the music that they like sounds Ionian, which of course is probably not true at all. Probably the opposite's true. Why? What causes it? Well, most blockage, in fact, I think all blockages are caused by a kind of insecurity. So in an insecure state, when you're not trusting and really letting go and allowing your natural inner musician to take over and do its job, in that insecure state, you reach for things that feel safe and feel secure, and perhaps in this case feel authoritative. It's very strange, because it must be somewhere deeply embedded in our psyche that this is the sound of authority. So being a good student, I often say this, being a good student, trying to be obedient and good and get it right and all that stuff, actually is the worst way to train fluency. You've got to be self-expressive. So obviously, music has many tonal flavors. You have, I would say there are 6 modes. Sometimes they say there are 7. I think the Locrian mode's a bit weird and a bit useless, a bit strange, a bit of a theoretical invention in the 20th century. So, but all the other 6 modes, all really great, equally strong as each other, and pentatonic tonality, and then of course chromaticism when we explore that. In order to explore all that richness of tonality, we have to open up. We have to let go of needing to get it right and be obedient and be good little citizens, you know, good little subjects of Queen and country, or whatever it is that we're feeling like on a very internal, hidden level. It's not like a conscious thought, but this is there. This is what's pulling us towards this particular tonality that is not something that we are consciously preferring. It's a subconscious or unconscious draw towards something authoritative. It's not even like it's recent. It's, we've had well over a century or more of music that in the Western classical tradition that doesn't adhere to the supremacy of Ionian tonality. So it's fascinating that this is happening. Now, I mention all this because I keep seeing it. As I say, I keep seeing people have this pull, and then they overthink. They think that the modes are more difficult, or that pentatonic tonality is more difficult, or that exploring chromaticism is difficult. It's not. I mean, how normal does chromatic tonality sound if I play, this block followed by, I don't know, this block? And that's, really sort of baldly showing you this kind of intermodal chromaticism that's very popular in music these days. We are not chromaticism and modal and pentatonic and blues and all these different tonalities. These are very, very predominant in the music that's all around us. So being pulled to Ionian tonality is very strange. It is definitely being pulled to being a good student, putting your thumb on F when you play a C major scale. There's something very limiting, very limited. It's not about expressing yourself. It's not about exploring. And to become fluent, you have to let go, because actually, what I teach is very, very simple. Literally, all you need to know is which tonal block, which harmonic block in particular, you're playing at each moment, and where the harmonic block's like a chord, a major or minor chord that goes through the whole keyboard. So which harmonic block is it? Where does that harmonic block live in the map of the keyboard? Which rhythm cell, there are 12 rhythm cells, and which rhythm cell you're playing, and where that rhythm cell is happening in the meter, the groove, the structure of the groove, the matrix, as I like to call it. Which rhythm cell, where it is in the groove, which tonal block, where is it in the keyboard map? If you know that, if that knowledge is clear, and you completely give yourself over to that, 100%, you have this natural, inbuilt inner musician, this sense of music, because we listen to music and we understand music, that will guide you. But people are too afraid to be guided from inside. And so they look to things on the outside. They look to authority, just as I suppose politically we look to some of these leaders that often don't do the job perhaps that we would like them to do. Could be the understatement of the century. So I'm not trying to make a political point. I'm trying to make a very important musical and psychological point, that we need to allow ourselves to explore, to really explore sounds. Like a good chef will explore flavors and will use different spices and different herbs from all different cultures to expand their repertoire of flavors and expand the repertoire of dishes. And this is what I think, this is very important, because contemporary music in the modern world is like a melting pot. It's kind of everything. And anyway, as I say, imagine it, Ionian music. What is it that we're really wanting to hear? Do we want to just play stuff that goes like this? because that's the kind of music you're going to hear that really adheres to Ionian in a very sort of, you know, solid way, in a non-deviating kind of way. Some people might say, well, what about the minor key? Because that's the major key, isn't it? The Ionian mode is the major key, or the major scale, what we think of as this kind of, you know, persistent idea in music theory. I saw a video on YouTube by Adam Neely saying, asking the question, is Western theory, music theory, white supremacist? Well, you know, so it persists. Some of these ideas actually persist in the theory, but I'm talking about people that don't have that experience with theory necessarily. It's something kind of sort of deeper, like an insecurity. So yeah, what about the minor key? Well, the minor key is based on the Aeolian mode, sometimes called the natural minor, but when we turn it into like the harmonic minor, it's a kind of corrupted version, an adapted version, which sounds more major. So basically the harmonic minor happens because we don't want to have the dominant chord 5, as a minor chord. So if I'm in A minor, sorry, if I'm in the Aeolian mode of A, so this is the tonal center, this is the sort of the dominant, very tonal, very modal sounding. If I want it to sound a little bit more 18th, 19th century colonial period, I'll make it major. I'll make the dominant chord major. So if I play the scale, I have to play the G sharp to show that when I play the dominant chord, it's always major. And this is a kind of chromaticism that's introduced to make the Aeolian mode not sound like the Aeolian mode anymore, but sound a lot more like a kind of slightly sadder version of the Ionian mode or something. So you can see how this stuff is very interesting. This is a historical period of great significance and some positive, obviously very positive impact on civilization, but also lots of very, very negative things that we're still dealing with now. And yet somewhere in our psyche, in our insecure state, we're still pulled towards that very Ionian sound that is the voice of repression and slavery and you know, that keeps us down. So freeing yourself from it is not something that's going to happen just by sort of thinking or being theoretical. It's about, you know, embracing some of the beautiful sounds. If I say this is the tonal center, that's not the tonal center, that is. These are flavors that are so deeply familiar to us. Why are we not going there? Why does it pull me? People actually say to me, you know, like, it's really hard. It's really hard not to keep going back to Ionian all the time. Fascinating. Why? Why is it hard? And this is the question. It's not really hard. The music, if you listen to modern pop music, if you listen to anything other than just this very narrow period of music, classical music history, if you listen to music from the 20th and the 21st century, it's going to be full of tonality that is not Ionian. So it's interesting what is pulling us. What's pulling people, I think, is the need to be good, the need to be secure, the need to be obedient. And the Ionian mode, the major key, is the sound of that. And it's pulling them in their insecurity. So what's required is to let go and feel the music and express yourself and discover all these beautiful, rich tonal sounds that are available.